it don't look right.
Hey guys, I know it's been a minute, about a month and a half since I put out a YouTube video. Today we're going to do an update on the Spring House. This is the to-be-built modern home that I'm building in the Catskills. I wanted to take a minute today to just give you guys an update on what we've been working on and the progress that we've made. The house was on the market about 4 days before I had an accepted offer. I mean, this was really an overwhelming response to this home. People loved it, they loved the design, they loved the idea. They loved the idea of taking the type of luxury and amenities that you would expect in a New York City condo and giving you that in this very rural, remote location. So the idea worked. We had an accepted offer within 4 days, and I ended up with a very long waiting list for the next build. So a lot has happened in the last month and a half since this project came on the market. I'm going to talk about two really broad, really important points today. Number one is my evolving relationship with my client. I think it's really important to develop a very trusting, very transparent relationship with my client as we move this process forward. And number two is construction strategy. Basically, we're talking about prefab versus stick-built. It's very important to match our construction strategy with our design intent. We'd made a lot of assumptions coming into this project when we were designing Spring House, and we turned out to be wrong on a lot of them. So stay tuned, I'm gonna break it down to all the pros and cons I found when analyzing prefab construction versus stick-built. Today I'm going to tell you about progress on the Spring House build and really break down the differences that I've found between a prefab and an on-site stick-built method. Okay, so before we get into it, please take a minute to press the subscribe button right down there. Press the subscribe button, press the like button, share this with somebody you know who might be interested in it. It will be my Christmas present from you to me, right? So if you don't know about the Spring House project, this is a to-be-built modern home in Bethel, New York. Basically, I'm selling a house that hasn't been built yet. So the house is 2,500 square feet. There's 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. And we put a lot of really cool features in the house. Like there's some really cool backyard landscaping with a mod pool. That's basically a swimming pool inside of a shipping container in the backyard. We created a breezeway with covered parking. You can kind of park your cart under the house and then kind of enter in from the side of the house. It's kind of a hidden entryway. There's a library that overlooks the living room. We have a beautiful fireplace, a beautiful kitchen with great finishings. It's really a very nicely done high-end modern home. We put it on the market for $995,000, so $1 million. So as soon as we put this on the market, I had an accepted offer within 4 days. You know, this was a little bit of an unorthodox deal, you know, and I found the best clients to move forward with that because they really got it, understood what I was trying to do, and really kind of shared in my vision and are willing to trust me in my vision. And I've returned that trust by being really, really transparent with them. Every little step I make, I let them know. I'm over communicating with them about everything that's going on. I made a database in the cloud that I gave them access to with every little contract that I sign, every little receipt, every little expenditure that happens. They might not want to see it, but they have the option. So I think that's really important that they have the ability to see what's going on and really at the end of the day understand how their money's being spent, right? So we had to create a contract based on a set of renderings, which is very interesting when you're dealing with lawyers, because lawyers are not a big fan of making contracts based on pictures.
Why, this is ridiculous.
But like I said, my client and I really got each other and are really understanding where we're coming from. We made a few tweaks to the contract to kind of keep the lawyers happy, but at the end of the day, we're both on the same page moving forward onto the next phase of the project, which is really determining what our overarching construction strategy is. For me, it's very, very important to have the biggest, most fundamental steps in any project right. And to me, it's worth it to take the time to kind of test out some assumptions, really based on data, and really make sure that your first, most initial steps are correct. If we make some mistakes down the road, we can handle that. If we get the wrong doorknobs, need to change the doorknobs, things like that happen. But I really wanted to know that we were going in the right direction with the right team. So that we really had to test out this assumption that we made that we were going to build this in a factory, because the spring house was designed to be built in a factory. But we needed to test that, needed to make sure that this was the right method. So what I ended up doing was taking a trip to Western Pennsylvania, outside Pittsburgh, to go visit a factory there that I had made contact with. They're kind of a smaller factory in the prefab world. They're family owned. They're really willing to work with architects and designers to really give them what they want and kind of listen to their constraints and their ideas in a way that a lot of prefab factories aren't. So this is a more high-end, customizable prefab factories. So I went to visit this factory. I needed to meet them. I needed to talk with them. I needed to touch and feel and see what they were doing. As far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't hire a general contractor without walking through one of his homes, right? So I wouldn't hire a factory without going to the factory and seeing what they were producing. So I was able to talk with them and more importantly, get a rough estimate from them. A rough estimate on cost based on my design, based on the spring house design. And then I also at the same time was talking to a general contractor up in my local area that I'm building in, a very reputable, experienced contractor. He's built hundreds of homes in the area, and I got the same set of rough numbers from him. So I was able to do an apples to apples comparison, okay? And I was really surprised by what I found. Now I'll get you to the bottom line in a little bit, but let's talk about some of the pros and cons of prefab building that I found along the way. So there's a lot of pros to building prefab, I think, and I've thought this for a while. Number one, I think the biggest advantage to building in a factory is the predictability that you get. You're working with the same crew all the time. These men and women are very skilled at their jobs. They do their jobs day in, day out in the same environment. They come at the same time every day. They know where their tools are. They know where their supplies are. Generally, having like a very predictable method to work in every day has a lot of advantages for the building process. Number two is that a lot of these factories are built in very remote areas, so you have a fairly low-cost labor pool that you can pull from. So if I get my modules built in Western Pennsylvania in a much lower-cost labor market, then I should be saving money by working in that market and shipping it in. That makes sense to me. That's a big advantage. Another big advantage goes back to quality control. I was super impressed by the quality that they were turning out. I mean, this was not shoddy, low-cost construction by any means. You're also going to be less susceptible to unknown factors and delays. Rain delays are not going to happen. Obviously, there's a roof. You can keep working in the rain. You can keep working through the winter. You don't have that winter shutdown. Also, a lot of contractors are running multiple jobs at the same time for multiple clients, and they're kind of moving the crews around to different jobs. So you have a problem at one job, it's going to affect another job. You don't have that in a factory situation. And number five, the last thing that I was really impressed with by this particular factory that I visited is their willingness to really customize the build and the finishings for me. Like I said, they have everything in stock at the site. The timber and the gypsum board and the insulation and all that stuff is there. But they also have all the finishings there. The flooring, the cabinetry, the doors, the door handles are all there. But if I did not like what they had supplied on site, they were willing to kind of create a whole independent supply chain for me. If I didn't like their windows, I can order my own windows, get those windows shipped in. They would hold them until it's time to install them in my modules. So that to me was a big advantage, that you have that option to create a separate supply chain.
So customer had this shipped here?
Yes.
And you guys are going to install it and
Yes.
and deliver the house with this installed?
Yes.
So now we get to the disadvantages. And I knew there were some disadvantages, but the disadvantages in this situation grew the more and more I looked into it. So, you have this predictability of an established system, but also a large entrenched established system is much harder to change, right? They do what they do on a daily basis, they're trained to do this process. If you want a different process, if you want to change that, it's much harder for them. And I think on-site is a little more kind of chaotic and different every time. So, if you want to change it or your architect wants to change it, that's easier to do in an on-site situation, I think. So I talked about building modules. You kind of notice the lingo. They talk about boxes, how many boxes you're going to get. So prefab is designed in modules. The spring house had 4 modules, or in lingo, boxes, 4 boxes. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. That's all they build is the boxes. There's so much they don't do in those boxes. I mean, you have to put in your whole foundation, right? And then once the modules are put in, you have to put your flooring in, you have to put your roof in, you have to put your siding on. A lot of times the cabinetry has to be installed on site. The tile can be partially installed but can't be grouted. I mean, there's just really, as you kind of go down the list and look at all the different things involved in the building process, basically nothing could be completely done in the factory and just be done. Everything either needs to be done on site or finished somewhat on site. I started to really question how that could really be efficient at all. So another thing that I think is a huge disadvantage is the engineering requirements. My home is going to have to be structurally engineered to withstand wind shear and snow loads. That's a certain level of engineering requirements. The level of engineering requirements to withstand the vibrations of going down the highway to be delivered to the site are a higher level of engineering requirements than the wind shear and the snow loads. So higher level of engineering means more cost, more wood, more potentially steel, reinforcements, whatever, going into the home. So that was a shock to learn about. And at the end of the day, the biggest con was what I thought was going to be the biggest pro that turned out to not be a pro, and that was the cost. So when the whole reason for doing a prefab build is essentially to save on cost. I mean, it's great to be more predictable, and the quality is there. I'm not doubting the quality, but at the end of the day, it was actually more expensive to build the home in a factory than it was to do it stick-built on site. And that's an apples to apples comparison where I basically got the 2 budgets and took out everything in either budget that wasn't a common denominator to the other budget. So you're really looking at getting the exact same result. It was 44% more expensive to build it in a factory and ship it to site than it was to stick-built on site the spring house design. So that's it, decision made. I mean, if it's not going to be less expensive, and potentially it's going to be more difficult with more complications of getting these multiple crews. It was a very clear answer with the spring house. We're going to stick build it on site with a local general contractor. I think maybe at this point in the Northeast United States, culturally, the idea of prefab construction hasn't really caught on enough yet for them to really reach scale where they can compete. You know, we have a real culture of building in this country that has to do with construction crews working on site. And people love prefab. There's a lot of interest in it, I know. I'm very interested in it, but I just don't think they're working at enough volume to make it scalable, to do the kind of customizations that I want. I hope that they get there. I think that we will. I think that there's obviously the market out there. So that's it. We're moving forward with the stick-built method for spring house. I'm super excited. I'm going to keep you guys posted as we move forward. I reassembled my team. I brought on a new architect to finish with my construction documents. I'm really excited about him. Maybe we'll get him on here soon to talk about some of the things that we're working on together. So that's it. Stay tuned, you guys. Make sure you subscribe. If you know somebody that's working on a build, you can forward this to them. Or if you know somebody that has some information for us, send them back to me. I'd love to talk to them. I'd love to hear somebody else's knowledge on this. Stay safe, guys. Stay warm. Happy holidays. I'll see you soon.